For joining me this Sunday afternoon on the Patrick O'More Show. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different because my very special guest that I've got sitting next to me right now, Vanessa, she is an Emmy nominated producer and Canadian Stage Award winner. She produces documentaries. And we're going to be talking about her latest project that's is going to be screening on this is April 9th, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
so April 9th, it's going to be screening, and I think it's very relevant. It's a relevant topic of today. It's called The Divided Brain, and it really talks a lot about a lot of what people face in our society today. That so many mixed things in and around. So mental health, how we view ourselves, some of the challenges that we're facing. So we're gonna just jump right in. And Vanessa, I'm gonna say, let's talk a little bit about you. And so you.
Yikes! You put me on the spot.
I know I'm putting you on the spot. But you're in a pretty tough field. It's a tough business.
It is. It is.
And it's being in I guess the entertainment industry, and from your part of the lens, being able to look at all it's dominated a lot by men.
Not really. I'd like to know.
Really?
I'd like to know. That's a misconception. It really is. I mean,
so part of the misconception then. Okay.
I mean, in the documentary field,
Yeah.
let's look. I deal with major broadcasters across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone I deal with, every commissioning editor that is responsible for overseeing the creative side of my films.
Yeah.
All of the business affairs people at the broadcasters, Canada Media Fund analysts, all women. I am waiting to see a man.
Really?
Yes.
So it is a big misconception then.
Oh, is there ever? Because I think what often I hear always repeated is, there's not enough female directors.
Yeah.
So they focus on this one position in the entire industry, and they ignore all of the other people, all of the background people, and all of the people who work at the broadcasters like CBC, TVO, CTV, right across Canada. I would say dominated by women. I'm sorry.
But big misconception, because you hear a lot that there's not enough women in this industry, in this field, and it needs to be grown.
I can't speak for the drama side.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for the factual side, but there's a lot of women in the factual side.
Okay.
Female producers. There are not as many women who run their own companies, certainly in the factual area, as I do, but it is populated by women. My business affairs person is a female. My production managers have been women. Mm-hmm. I'm still waiting to catch sight of a man. Maybe he's on an island somewhere.
Okay. Well, that's reassuring to hear. Because what we are bombarded with in the media a lot of the times, it's unfortunate. Okay, that's good. It's unfortunate. That's good to hear.
Also, women, men take a lot of risks.
Yeah.
At this point in technology, there is no reason why a woman who wants to make a film just doesn't go out there and shoot it. Mm-hmm. She shouldn't be sitting back waiting, I can't get any funding, I'm knocking at the door, no one's going to let me in.
Yeah.
Go out and shoot it. Go out and find funding.
Is it a funding issue? Is it
There are many. This is an extremely competitive field. Mm-hmm. And if you can do anything else, if you're talented at anything else, go do it. But don't get into this field. It's brutal. I'm serious. It is brutal.
Okay.
So it is brutal for everyone, not women, not just women, men. It is brutal for everyone.
So considering, so
it's highly competitive.
If you had known what you know now about the industry when you first got in, would you have still gotten in?
I'm a bloody fool. Yes, I would have.
I
may have done things differently, as we all do. When we start our own businesses and we run them, we make mistakes. We make huge mistakes, and hindsight is 20/20, as they say. But I would have done things a little differently. I would have made sure I had more financial backing. But one thing that I'm very proud of, and that is that I've made high-quality films. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much I had to tear my hair out, no matter all the bad news I'd get on a Monday morning, who was pulling out the financing,
yeah.
the films actually did happen. And we do have a very fair funding system in Canada. It's just highly competitive.
So was this something that you always wanted to do? You always wanted to produce?
I migrated here. When I was a kid, I was a film buff, and I remained a film buff. When I was at university, I'd go and see all of the foreign films. So I wanted to become an actress. That's what I really wanted to do. Yeah. But at university, I went through for French language and literature. I got a master's degree in it. I started teaching high school English and French. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I did a lot of amateur theater. Then I went pro for a number of years. And then it became clear to me, I wanted to be a boss. I wanted to run my own business. I wanted, more importantly, really, I wanted to have control over my own creative life. I didn't want to be, like many actors, beggar cap in hand, right? I read a great deal, and I felt I had, I wanted to get important ideas out there, not my ideas, other people's ideas that I felt were being discussed in books that were important, and that I felt maybe many people out there wanted to hear about them.
Yeah. Good segue. So let's talk about the divided brain, and so I was reading a little bit about your background with it, and so. It said that in 2012 you had read the book, and that just sort of captured you at that point in time. What was it about what you read that put you in a place that I need to tell this story visually?
Well, I had already been in the brain space. I had made 2 films with, one for the CBC called Fixing My Brain, about a system in Toronto, the Aerosmith School, that was revolutionary, and it dealt with kids who were learning disabled, and this system helped raise their cognitive levels, raise their IQ. That's okay. And so I was in this space already, and then I thought of doing something about the brain and music. And so this book came out called "This Is Your Brain on Music" by Dan Levitin, and I thought, I've got to make this film. So so I got Sting to be our main scientific experiment. Oh. And so we ran experiments on him. Okay. And that was fun. So by the time,
said, okay, you can experiment on me.
No, he was very nice. He let us play with his brain.
Oh, nice.
and so I did that film for CTV and for National Geographic. So I was already primed when the next big book came out. I just wanted to pounce on it. So what was revealing about this book, first of all, it had become somewhat of a bestseller in the UK, and I realized that the author, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, was a well-known psychiatrist and neuroscientist, and he was considered one of the best minds in Europe. So I was primed to read this book. It was 800 pages long, almost killed me. But
that's a turnoff for a lot of people. You know, when they pick up a book and it's like super thick, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm never going to finish this."
But I was a third of the way through, and I thought, "Oh my God, this is a major idea. This is what people in the UK have been talking about. That this is a major idea about this was a revolutionary idea about the relationship between the brain and society, how we function as a society in our Western world, not the rest of the world. So it's about United States, Canada, UK, Western Europe. And what it was saying was that there is enough evidence to show, there's enough scientific evidence to show that the left hemisphere of the brain is gaining power over the right hemisphere of the brain, and with disastrous consequences if we don't do something. So it sounds very strange, and I know when I started talking to broadcasters, they thought it was voodoo. So, but what he is actually saying is, look, over many, many centuries, we have started to favor all of the values of the left hemisphere over the right hemisphere. So what does this mean, and why should we
a lot of people, they don't understand the difference between the breakup.
So what he's saying is, forget everything you've read about being left-brained or right-brained. It's all nonsense. It's all pop psychology about, the right brain, nice colors and beautiful sentiments and nice wishy feelings, and the left hemisphere being logic and technology. He says, forget about that. He says, they both do everything. The important thing that we know today, based on science, based on being able to look inside brains, and more importantly, based on stroke patients who've lost, who've had a big hemisphere stroke on either side, what we know is that both hemispheres that are separated by this membrane have very different views on reality, on the world out there. So the left hemisphere makes us manipulate the world. What this means is it has speech, but also it knows it is the hemisphere of bureaucracy, systems, check boxes. It has a very, very narrow focus on the world out there. If you're looking at a landscape, it will see the individual trees. It will not see the whole. It has made us very powerful because it is the hemisphere that builds skyscrapers, engineering feats. It does big things, flush toilets, all of that. But what it lacks, it does not understand human relationships. It doesn't understand embodied experiences. So it doesn't understand its, our relationship with wildlife, with nature, with other people. It can't process nonverbal cues, body language. So a person that has got an overabundance of these qualities may not have judgment. They may not have wisdom. So the right hemisphere is there to help us understand the world. It is the CEO of the brain. It's the master of the brain. It knows what it doesn't know. If you're a violin player, if you're a soccer player, if you're a skater, all that technical stuff you have to learn, it says, okay, left hemisphere, go at it. But what it does, it's got the gut instinct. It's got wisdom. It understands the embodied experience. It's about relationships between other people. It understands that we're part of nature, that we're part of this whole world. It sees the big picture.
So as our society focuses less and less on the bigger picture, so sort of like our connection with the world around us and what that impact is. What are some of those results that we're seeing?
Well, if we look at, so in the film, we look at the environmental crisis. We look at the economic crash of a number of years ago. And now, I'm not an expert at this, but, my understanding is that if we are following algorithms, right? Which they did, which economists often do. What happens then is you get into a system where if stockbrokers have been selling those subprime mortgages
Yeah.
in Florida somewhere, they keep selling them. They know there's something wrong here that's not working, but they
Yeah.
keep selling them because there's
they're
a
making
lot
money.
of commission involved. So somehow the crash, people losing their homes in Florida, all of a sudden bankrupts Denmark, or all of a sudden causes this huge problem in a foreign country. In the end, these algorithms were so complex that the economic analysts themselves did not understand them. So what we're dealing with is we're dealing like a left hemisphere train that's leaving the station and no one can stop it. So what economists are saying, economists who are big fans of Ian's work, what they're saying in the film is there's got to be a more sustainable way of running economic systems, meaning we've got to look more holistically at these systems.
Well, a lot of the way that our system is set up and designed is that there needs to always be growth, and
yes,
there's not always, like, you get to a point where you can't grow anymore,
exactly.
Until something collapses under its own weight.
Exactly.
It's the natural order of things. Things can only get so big until they collapse onto themselves. So, but there's a lot of conversation in around things like mental health issues, and
so what we are seeing is we are seeing the rise of neurological disorders in young children.
Yes.
We're not exactly sure why, but we know that it's happening. And these neurological disorders, some of them are, for example, autism. Yes. So autism is a deficit of the right hemisphere. These are often people, I don't want to speak for all cases,
Gotcha.
but a lot of times they are children or individuals that cannot make human connections. They're much more comfortable with things. They're much more comfortable with gadgets, with processes, with their, with their mobile platforms.
Yeah.
You can see how much of a techno peasant I am. So a lot of these disorders indicate that there is a deficit in the right hemisphere where these people don't have common sense, they don't have good judgment, where they have to be trained to actually read faces. What we've had is I've attended I attended one lecture of Ian's where an elementary school teacher in Toronto said that she'd been a kindergarten teacher for something like 25 years, and she said, we're at the point now we're seeing children come in who don't know how to read faces. That is a right hemisphere deficit. So we know these things are happening, but we don't know what really don't know what the origins are.
So when you say read faces,
meaning they can't remember someone's face.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And and we know that schizophrenia, again, which is a left hemisphere problem, is also has also been on the rise since the 19th century. So what we do in the film is we look back and we say, well, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And so we look at the fact that once we got past, once people left farms, let's say in the 18th, and you had the industrial revolution in the 19th century, people left their farms. They left their embodied experience, their relationship to the land, to the animals,
communities, everything.
Exactly, and all of a sudden they became these automatons in these factories, right?
Yeah.
And so slowly they started having these disembodied experiences. And once you become alienated from other people, from the land, something starts to happen. Then we have the technical revolution.
Yes.
And people are more and more removed from real embodied experiences.
Yeah.
Some people get it by going to the park, being with their friends, being out in nature.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're just joining us right now, sitting next to me is Vanessa Dylyn. And we are talking about her upcoming documentary that's going to be aired on CBC. And
Yes.
There's a screening that's going to be happening of that. And you could talk
The
a little
screening
bit about it.
is on April the 9th, and it's at the Elizabeth Bader Theatre in Toronto. And we have a real treat. It's not just the film, but we have a panel, a very distinguished panel. Dr. Norman Doidge, who's the best-selling book on the brain's way of healing, and Dr. Jordan Peterson, whom needs no introduction. And they're going to be engaging in dialogue with Ian McGilchrist, by UK Link. And so we're going to have a great discussion that evening. And there's also going to be a Q&A with the audience. So I lucked out.
That sounds like it's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. So we realize that as we as human beings become less and less connected to each other, less and less connected to the world around us, like, as you were saying before, we moved away from the farms and our communities, and we went to the cities, and we became, a cog in a wheel of this industrial wheel.
Right.
And many individuals, we don't even know who our neighbors are.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yes.
don't know the people around us. We just sort of have this isolated world, and kids today are, they're stuck on their gadgets, their devices. They might be talking to other people around the planet, but it's just all electronically, wherein the very things that were supposed to make our lives easier and allow us to connect more with one another seems to be dividing us more along so many different lines. And media is being used in such a can't even say the word, in such a way to divide us politically, and the world we live in is very divisive right now. But so the conversation, from what he's saying within the book, is that a lot of the mental health challenges that we're seeing the rise of in our society today is related to that lack of connection.
Exactly. And I think a lot of mental health people would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. No, with when you look at, putting this in air quotes here because I don't like the way that we sort of separate each other by using this, but non-Westernized civilizations, when we look at communities that are more connected with one another, and they tend to be less wealthy than the wealthy nations, which is so weird. So the more wealthy you are, the less connected we tend
That's
to be
what
with
it
one
appears
another.
to be. And apparently they seem to be, they unless you're in dire poverty, right?
Yeah.
But if you are living in a society where you have most of what you need, you've got enough food, you have a roof over your head, you've got neighbors, you're part of a village,
Yeah.
so to speak, it seems that after that, the happiness level does not go up with greater wealth.
Oh, okay. So the wealthier you are, the doesn't mean that the happier. Well, I think we all know that because we see, wealthy people committing suicide, wealthy people doing some crazy things, just as much as anyone else really
Yes.
in the world. But is there a conversation at all in terms of what is seen in the non-Westernized societies? Is
Yes.
there a rise as well to some degree, or not?
I think my understanding is that the more industrialized a society becomes, there is a rise in mental illness, and I'm not sure if that's because of the disconnection from other human beings or from lived experience.
Right.
I think we're going to have a huge challenge right now with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's right at our doorstep, and we're going to go through another major revolution. So all the jobs that, let's say, we have an embodied experience with, woodworking, masonry, everything that we do with our hands, that's going to be automated. Much of that is going to be automated.
Yeah.
So that is going to cause a crisis. I mean, the idea behind this is there's nothing wrong with progress, there's nothing wrong with technology, but we need a more holistic system of dealing with the human fallout.
Yeah.
And this is where the right hemisphere comes in. This is where the humanities come in, philosophy, ethics, people who've studied human experience. One of the fears is that the technology is moving so fast that we don't have the ethics in place to deal with how we're going to use this technology.
Because and we can definitely see that in that we always seem to, our laws always seem to be playing catch up to how quickly technology moves.
Exactly.
And we all know the AIs, the robots, they're coming to kill us all soon.
They're coming to get you, Patrick, and they're going to take over your microphone.
Exactly, they're going to take over my microphone. I hear things about they've had AIs program songs or create songs and do all these different things, and yeah, I think it's a not just a debate, but it's a reality of something that we really have to prepare ourselves for.
Yes.
What is the world going to look like in the next 10 years? The more that things become automated, soon driverless cars will be everything on the road. Taxis will no longer have a taxi driver. So what's the taxi driver going to do when they lose their livelihood?
Yes.
And that interaction that they may have had with their passenger
Exactly.
as they're driving.
Exactly.
And that passenger with that cab, now they're just in an autonomous vehicle, and that human interaction is removed from the equation. That's going to have an impact.
Yes, absolutely.
And a lot of that we don't really think about. I had a conversation with I have a 14-year-old, soon to be 15, and he's in grade 9 right now. And I was talking to him about stuff that's going on with him at school and his friends and all this stuff. And one of the things that he said to me that I've heard that there are a lot of students who are really stressed out, who depressed, all this sort of stuff. And so he said, we were talking about this, and he said, I don't think the teachers understand what we're going through, and that most of the kids that he knows in his school, they're depressed right now. They're going through a lot of challenges right now. And so I was having a conversation with him. Well, what is it that they're depressed about? Because thinking, 14 years old. You got free food and a roof over your head, and
Exactly.
What you got to worry about?
They're not in a salt mine, for heaven's sake.
Exactly. It's not, they're not in a coal mine, like back in the old days, right? So what is it that these kids are stressed about? And and I think it goes a lot back to what you were saying, where a lot of these kids they are not connected with their teachers on a human level. They're not connected with their parents really on a human level. They kind of have their friends, and a lot of these kids today, they're kind of come home, they're in their room and they lock their door, and that's kind of it. Yeah. They're sort of cut off, and so there is no that level of human interaction. It diminishes.
Exactly.
And so you're kind of left. These kids are kind of left inside their own heads with their own thoughts.
Absolutely.
Mulling over whatever those frustrations are, and when you're in a society that doesn't have all those gadgets, then they're forced to cope more by interacting with other people.
Exactly. And it may be that they're in societies where they sit down with their parents and have dinner every night and they chat.
Yeah.
And there's that, bonding, which in many cases we don't have here. And it's I think certainly the message in the film is that we have to have a more holistic way of dealing with our problems. Whether we're dealing with the environment, whether we're dealing with mental health, we have to stop looking at it as little piecemeal ways of dealing with things. I mean, we're so specialized here in our Western world, whether it's specialized as doctors, specialized teachers, that very often we don't look at the whole person.
But there seems to be there's a big push in our society that, you know, if you're depressed, go see your doctor. You get a pill.
Yes.
You know, if you're whatever is going on with you, go get your Prozac or your this or that or whatever, and then you're good. But then nobody really talks about it. It's funny, you know, if when I had cable, I had commercial, you know, there would be a lot of times there are drug commercials that would come across from the U.S.
Yes.
And you know, they would be talking about this antidepressant drug, and then the disclaimer part of the commercial, which was like longer than the commercial, and in the disclaimer, if you listen to it, a lot of times the side effects is what
Death.
it is that you're trying to get rid of. You know,
Exactly.
if it's an antidepressant drug, then it's if you feel like killing yourself, consult your doctor, stop taking the medication. I'm like, how does that work? When we seem to be in this, everybody wants a pill as a quick fix.
Absolutely.
As
No.
opposed to really just kind of sitting down and talking to somebody.
Exactly.
And I guess in a non-Westernized environment, the pharmaceutical companies haven't really been able to break in quite yet to sort of be giving this quick fix, which doesn't really work.
No, and it's the commercials in the U.S. have become a bit of a joke because they're all in this loop.
Mm-hmm.
This will help you, but these are the 150 side effects that you're going to have, and don't be surprised if you wake up dead tomorrow morning. You know, I had a strange experience. The book, Ian McGilchrist's work, came back to me just it just hit me across the head one day when I was in the art gallery of Ontario, and they had this, and there were a lot of people there, and there were significant numbers of people, mostly younger people, that were not looking at the paintings. They were taking iPhone pictures of the painting.
Yes.
So they would have an experience, a virtual experience later, instead of having the
real
embodied,
experience,
instead of having the embodied
Yeah.
experience right now. I found that very, very strange.
And you see you see that now with you know, you're out to dinner with a bunch of people.
Yes.
And everybody's snapping, taking selfies, all this sort of stuff, and that connecting with one another is just right now. Just connect with the person beside you. Put your phone down. Just talk to them. Everybody's got to get the selfie so that they can share what's happening, what they're not interacting with
Exactly.
right now.
Exactly. So we see it.
Mm-hmm.
In all aspects of our society.
So so in your documentary, John Cleese, is that right?
John Cleese,
John Cleese.
So John, we have a fantastic scene with him, and I thought of John.
He allowed you to play with his brain too?
No, John. John was very funny. I got hold of him because I saw that he was a fan of Ian's work, and he recommended Ian's book because he deals with, he has corporate clients who he teaches creativity, so that, you know, business people can learn to be more
creative
exactly.
Okay.
So John, we decided to ask John to appear with Ian. And so we chose the Hunterian Museum in London, which is full of brains. It's full of people's brains who like really interesting people, and it's full of skeletons, like the tallest man who ever lived.
Yeah.
You know, he's got those skeletons. So Ian and John wander through this museum, basically having fun and kibitzing, but then John gets a bit serious, and John reveals that his training was as a lawyer, if you can believe this.
Oh wow!
And so he said when he was at Cambridge, training as a lawyer, he was used to using a certain part of his brain and thinking in a certain way. You know, it was only when he started doing comedy that it just freed him. It freed him. It just freed his brain to look at situations in a very different way.
Yeah.
And so that's a very funny scene.
Yeah, well, I'm a big, much like a lot of other people on this planet, I'm a big fan of his. So I can't wait to check out the documentary. So you read the book in 2012. You thought, I need to be able to bring this, to the world visually. What was that process like for you to be able to do that? Did you just go out and say, okay, CBC, I want to do this, give me lots of money, let me go do this?
No, it was...
Everybody was knocking at your door saying, here's a couple $1 million, go ahead?
No, this production had more curses than Tut's tomb.
Okay.
Seriously. And it keeps getting cursed all along the way. We keep having very, very strange things happening. So what happened was Ian was on a lecture tour. He came to Toronto. I had arranged to meet with him through his agent, etc. And I knew that other people, I knew that a number of production companies in the UK had approached him. So I got hold of a great science writer and I said, read the book.
Yeah.
Do a TV treatment on this so that I have something to show Ian.
Yeah.
So when Ian and I met, we sat down and he was pretty impressed by the fact that we'd actually done some really hard work. And so shortly after that, he said, yes, we're going to go ahead. I took it to everyone in Canada, everyone in Europe, everyone in the UK, and they all said, what is this? They knew who he was, but they didn't see how we could take 800 pages of a real dense scientific thesis and make it into a fun film, because that's what it's got to be. It's got to be a film that appeals to a curious mind.
Yes.
Just anywhere between 15 to 90, it's got to appeal to a curious mind. So finally, Super Channel in Canada came in, and so we had most of our funding. So I took a risk. I thought, let's go ahead. But unfortunately, what happened was that Super Channel declared bankruptcy without having paid us a cent, and we were left holding close to $100,000. I personally, I am not a wealthy woman. I live by my wits.
This is, when you're running your own business, these are some of the challenges that you end up facing.
I had to stop. I had to stop.
You know what that's like.
I had to look for other money. CBC was very sympathetic. They came in for a much, much smaller license, but just to help me keep all of the rest of my funders in place so that it would qualify as a Canadian film. And then it was a huge challenge creatively. How do we do this? And so I had Manfred Becker was the director of the film. Stephen Milton was the writer, and basically it was the three of us hammering this out over a year, trying different things, trying different editors, and I went through many iterations, many cuts, and I wasn't happy with it. So finally, about a year and a half ago, I just took it and I revamped, I restructured the whole thing with help from a few editors, and then it was fine. I mean, I'm happy with it. We premiered it in London, in the UK, with an incredible audience, and that was supported by Ogilvy and Mather, the big advertising agency. Okay. Because somehow Ian's work spoke to them. And so it was a huge, just a huge journey. And many mornings I woke up and I thought, why am I still alive?
Well, I was going to just say, when you ran into all these different obstacles, what was it that kept you going? That you just didn't just say, you know what, I'm going to count this as a loss, move on to the next thing.
I couldn't disgrace the family. No, seriously. Yeah. Ian spent a lot of time with us, making sure that we got the science right. So I couldn't bail. I was in it too deep. I was in the weeds of this thing, and I had to get out of the swamp. I just couldn't bail because it would have been a defeat that I would not have been able to live with.
Yeah. So
I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I decided just to parachute up.
That's with running, manage, and I guess this really kind of speaks to what we're talking about. Is that for a lot of people, they get to that point wherein what they're doing, they run into these brick walls, and that in itself has an impact with how they begin to view the world, and begin to walk, sometimes feeling defeated, as opposed to being creative or being something to find another way or another alternative to be able to still make this happen. Did any of the book come back to you while you were in this place?
Yes, and not so much in this place, but as I moved forward, after I read the book and I moved forward in this film, because I've had this film in my mind and in my heart now for a number of years. Mm-hmm. So I started seeing the world in a slightly different way. It's actually improved my perception of how to work with people. Because sometimes, sometimes we work with someone and we say, why is it that I can't communicate with that person? Why is it that they aren't getting what I'm saying?
It's their fault.
But I've realized that people perceive the world differently, and I once worked with someone who always started a conversation or started to pitch a project from all the details, instead of pitching the project from the big picture. Yeah. And when you're pitching a project to a broadcaster, just like you're talking to an idea, just if you're talking to anyone about a new idea, you have to speak big picture, and then you have to give examples and details. Mm-hmm. So I know why now that level, so I now know why that person was difficult to deal with, and so I can work with that. Mm-hmm. So if I can work with that knowledge now. And also something else happened, and this could have happened simply because I was just desperate, I don't know. But I never had a relationship with nature or with wildlife as I was growing up. And up until very recently, I just didn't notice trees. I didn't notice things in the park. I didn't notice flowers that much. I like flowers, but as anyone does. I didn't see squirrels. I didn't see all of that wildlife. And I used to make fun of tree huggers. Oh, I'd say, God, what a tree hugger.
I see squirrels all the time. They're in my backyard, chewing on my garbage. I hate them. Sorry. But now I have a much greater perception. There's a perception that when I go out my door, when I go into the back, of my condo, and there's parkland there, I watch those people with their dogs. I watch squirrels. I watch birds. And I had the strangest impulse to go and hug a tree. I just stopped myself, but I had a strange impulse. I wanted to go and hug this tree. And seriously, it's had that effect working on this film. So a lot of people, if you had hugged a tree, a lot of people would wonder what's going on.
Exactly. Get away from that woman.
Exactly. It would have the opposite effect. You wouldn't have been able to connect with the people around you. This has this, what you've sort of dug through and all the information you got from the book and then putting this documentary together, has it changed you, really? Has it changed your views? Do you want to hug more trees? Has it impacted you?
I think it's made me much more aware of where we're going in our society in terms of that left brain type of thinking. Yeah. It's made me aware of the dangers out there, that if we continue on this path, it's going to be very difficult to pull back. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing this on our campuses. We're seeing it through politically correct speech, the narrowing of speech, what you can say, what you can't say. So I think what was really telling for me, and a warning sign, is American comedians will not perform on college campuses.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because apparently college students cannot take a joke.
Oh.
And so there's a real chill. There's a real chill on campuses. It's not just the protesting against speakers whose views they disagree with. Mm-hmm. It's actually in the entertainment world. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld said, "No way, I'm not going there," because people are not getting that. These are just jokes. We're laughing at life.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's that is a big shift. So, on one hand, we all know human interaction, being connected to the world around us, all that stuff. We all know that there's value in that.
Yes.
But then, on the other hand, we live in a society that, going against. There's so many industries that are developed to go against that. So whether it's the pharmaceutical industry, you don't need to go outside and be one with nature, just take a pill to feel better. Whether it's social media, wherein our metadata is being mined by so many different corporations that wants to keep us glued
yes.
to, these devices. Whether it's TV that wants to, there's so many different things out there that over time has done a really good job of investigating how to get us addicted.
Absolutely.
And so we're standing in this, an individual is kind of standing in this no man's land of how do I combat the addictive nature of all the things that I'm being bombarded with, and my need for human connection, my need to be connected with the environment, connected with nature, because we are seeing it. Climate change is a thing, and there are a lot of people who are not connected to nature who don't seem to understand that it's a thing.
It's a problem.
Yeah. Everywhere we go, you can have somebody stand up and tell a lie 50 million times, and then people start to believe that to be the real narrative. Even confronted with evidence, they still believe what it is that they were told, as opposed to the evidence. So it's a mess. What do we do? Do we just give up? What do we do?
I think someone in the film, and I think also, and he mirrors a lot of people out there, there is a groundswell of people who are aware of this. Mm-hmm. And I think this awareness is going to help us put in place either policies or some way of warning people that technology is fine. Technology is making life far easier for us. It's helping us, but we have to keep a balance between using technology to enhance our lives instead of it controlling our lives.
Yeah, and that when I look at kids today, 8, 9 years old, even younger than that, the parents are busy, so they hand their kid a tablet. Kids got a cell phone, and they're already being, the multitude of endorphins are already being released within their brains because they're connected to this device at such an early age, and the addictiveness of that is starting so young that even with the adults being aware of it, at times it can feel so overwhelming when you look at all of this, and it's like, do I just move to a small town up north someplace and get off the grid and and unplug from society?
No, you know what, Patrick? I'm so glad I don't have children. I wouldn't know. I don't know if I could take all that pressure. I mean, I by nature I'm a Victorian when it comes to children. They should be seen and not heard, and definitely not exposed to gadgets. I don't know. I don't know how parents do it. It really is. I mean, I cannot imagine being nagged by an 8 or 9 year old who's screaming for their gadget. I don't know how people do it.
Yeah, because they're screaming for it because they're addicted.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have again with my youngest, I I always have these conversations with him. Like sometimes he'll come home and he's lock himself in the room, in his room, and I'll walk in his room and I'm like, buddy, you're gonna come out and interact with us at some point? He's like, yeah. And then he'll come out and he'll sit and we'll talk or whatnot for a bit, and sort of deprogramming himself, I guess, from stuff. But then he'll go back and he's online playing video games with his brothers or his friends or whatever. And so trying to figure out what that balance is going to be. I went to my parent-teacher council meeting, and a lot of the parents were concerned that their kids were just stuck on their devices and their video games and like all this stuff, and they're trying to figure out, how do I connect with my child? How do I and it's a big problem that a lot of people are facing. Maybe someone should put together a school out in the middle of nowhere and send all the kids so they can decompress from all this stuff. I don't know.
Yes, no, it's a huge problem that people have to work through.
We've got a few minutes left, and there's a couple things, last things I want to sort of talk with you about. Again, if you're just joining us right now, we're sitting here, we're talking about the upcoming documentary, Divided Brain, and the screening for that in Toronto.
On April the 9th at the Elizabeth Bader Theatre, and you can get tickets at thedividedbrain.com. And it's not just the film screening, but we have a fantastic panel after the screening. Dr. Norman, two of Canada's most popular speakers in Canada and outside of Canada, Doctors Norman Doidge and Jordan Peterson.
Now, so if you had a chance to talk to yourself when you first started in this business, what would you say to yourself? Don't do it.
Find a nice man and get married. Seriously, if I were to look back, I would just say, make sure that you have a bit more help. To just make sure that you have partners, that you're not doing this solo, because that's too hard. Yeah, I would, anyone who's getting into this business, first of all, get your brain checked. And to make sure you're going in with money, and that will keep you there for a while. Make sure that you've got some person who's investing money, or you've got or if you make sure you're going in with a few partners. Because I am, as a small independent producer, I am competing with mid-sized companies. I'm competing with larger companies. We all knock on the same doors.
We're all knocking the same doors for the same funding.
Yes.
So when you look back at all you've achieved,
thank you,
and all that you've and all that you've struggled through to achieve what you've achieved, how do you feel about that?
Tired. No, I honestly, I don't have. I don't think about that. I think about, like many people in my business, I think about, okay, good, I've done that, I've survived that, let me go on to, let's see what's happening. So I tend to be a foolish optimist. I tend to see what else is out there. And I have 20, 30 projects that are sitting there just dormant, just waiting. And it's really, a lot of things won't go, because if you're lucky to get a broadcaster involved in 1 out of 10, you're doing well.
That's pretty good.
So, yeah.
It's definitely been a pleasure having you come and hang out with me today.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
I am excited. So, you said the documentary is available online?
No, it will be available after the CBC broadcast, and I'm not sure yet when that is. I think it's later this spring or in the summer.
Okay.
But if people want to go to the screening, that's the April 9th date.
Okay. So again, April 9th, and you can get more information at thedividedbrain.com.
Right.
There's more details there that you can get information about tickets and times and all that wonderful stuff. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing conversation that's going to happen afterwards. And when we look at the society that we live in, and the struggles that we all face in terms of, it just feels like everybody's busy trying to make ends meet, especially if you live in the city of Toronto, you know, and you got a rent to pay.
Yes.
You know, everybody's busy trying to do everything, and we don't really spend enough time connecting with each other the way that we really need to.
Yes.
We don't spend enough time connecting with the environment, getting outside, watching the squirrels. Even in my backyard, I'm gonna get those squirrels. They chewed through my blue bin. They chewed through the plastic.
No.
There's a big hole in there that they chew. I don't know how. These are mutant squirrels or something. They chewed through it. But anyhow, I digress.
They're just fierce urban squirrels.
They're very fierce. But yeah, you know, our ability to be able to connect with other people in real relationships. I remember, just quickly because I only have a couple of minutes, but years ago, so friends of mine, we went to Cuba, and we left the resort and went to this really small town, and it was one of the most amazing experiences that I have ever had. And we were at this little small town, a few hundred people, and there was a party that was happening that night. Pretty much the whole town was there. Kids, adults, grandparents, everybody was there. And the level of community and camaraderie that was there was just mind-boggling to us. And we sat around and like everybody knew everybody in the town and everything. And we my friends and I, we were talking about the fact that we don't even know our neighbors. We don't really know the people around around us. And when we were on our way back, we said, you know, we really need to spend some time and getting connected with the people that are around us. Get to know our neighbors, you know, somewhat. And it didn't really happen. When we got back, sadly, it didn't really happen. But when I stop, I always remember that feeling of being in that environment where everybody was really connected with one another and welcomed us just like we were one of them. And it was one of the most amazing feelings that I think a lot of people in our society don't know.
Right,
right. And we crave for that. And yeah, we're definitely seeing the impact of the fact that we crave that, but we don't make it happen. It's kind of scary. Kind of scary. So, any last things that you want people to know about the screening that is going to be happening?
No, simply, again, you can go to the dividedbrain.com for tickets, and the tickets include the film and a post-film talk with Dr. Norman Doidge and Dr. Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Okay. Like I said, it's definitely been a pleasure having you. I'm looking forward to seeing the documentary. For those of you online who have been following us for a little while, we are starting up Soulfist Lounge again. It's going to be happening on Friday, April 26th. You can get tickets online, and it's going to be a special night for us because it's going to be our fourth year anniversary little celebration. Also, some big news that are going to be coming out of the UK in and around that time as well, so also stay tuned for that. So Soulfist Lounge is going to be back, and you can get tickets online if you just go to the Soulfest page on Facebook, my page on Facebook, the iLive page on Facebook. It's all over there through Eventbrite. So definitely check that out. Once again, thank you very much for being here.
And thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I know it's not very scary. I'm not a scary guy.
Not at all.
Thank you guys for hanging out with me this Sunday afternoon. It's definitely been a pleasure. Stay tuned for...
This is Felicia Temple, and you're listening to iLive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio.
Hi, I'm urban Christian artist Kayla James, and you're listening to iLive Radio.
This is Atina, and you're listening to iLive Radio, changing the way you listen to radio.
Hey, this is your boy Easeman. You're listening to iLive Radio, supporting independent artists from around the world.